Welcome back to my channel, your cozy, comfy corner for guided journal prompts that will spark a new sense of self-discovery, heal your inner child, and help you take the next step closer to a better version of yourself. Grab your pen, journal, and your favorite drink, and let's jump into today's discussion. Today we're walking through a set of journal prompts that will help you get to the root of why you feel stuck and allow you to move forward in the right direction. There are so many reasons why you may feel stuck. Maybe you're in a job that's unfulfilling. It pays the bills, but you dread every one day. Maybe you want a change of environment, but the thought of moving away from your friends and family is daunting. Maybe you're in a stage in life where you're questioning your life purpose, wanting to create more meaning, but unsure what that looks like. Regardless of what the situation is, the constant is that feeling stuck is a result of inaction. If you feel stuck, you're simply just not moving. Instead, you're stuck in indecision or you're continuing a cycle that is not serving you. But if it's that simple, then why does it feel so hard to get unstuck? Unfortunately, we're often not moving in the right direction, or we just don't know what that right direction is, which is why the cycle continues. If you're like me, you're an overthinker, and you may have been thinking about these issues for a while. For me, it's easy to get lost in my thoughts and spiral into a state of indecision, going back and forth between wanting to do something to change and telling myself all the reasons why it won't work. This contemplation ultimately leads to a freeze state, where I either ignore the problem or try to convince myself it's not an issue. This just feeds anxiety and inevitably brings regret. To get unstuck, you first need to figure out why you feel stuck. Really analyze the emotions that come up when you think of the different areas of life. From there, it's about getting past the limited beliefs that you have, evaluating the stories you're telling yourself, and figuring out what you're trying to avoid or pretending not to care about. This gives you the clarity to see what direction you need to go in. Once you fully understand the issue that's keeping you stuck, the simplest thing you can do to not feel stuck is to move towards a direction that feels aligned. If being stuck is giving you anxiety and regret, then the opposite side of taking action is fulfillment, evidence that you were able to move towards what you desire and that you have the power to define your life. The 4 prompts in this video will help you find the right direction and take the first step towards being unstuck. I'll walk through each prompt and then they'll be listed on the screen during the reflection portion of the video. The first question to ask yourself is, where in life do you feel the most stuck and why? Think about the emotions that come up as you think about categories like career, love, identity, and health. Is there a visceral feeling that comes up for any of these categories? Are there friction points that you wish you could solve but don't know where to start? Let your emotions guide you to the area you want to further explore. When thinking about why this area is important to you, reflect on the emotions you'd feel once you start to address this area, as well as the emotions you'd feel once it was improved. The second question is, what stories have I told myself about the area in life that I'd like to address? Are the stories true, or is it fear talking? Sometimes the biggest obstacles in our way is ourselves. Until you decide to shift your mindset and start believing that other perspectives are possible, it's hard to get unstuck. Take the area you want to focus on and ask yourself, why haven't I done anything to change it when I know it's not what I truly want? Are you telling yourself that there's nothing you can do or that it's not worth trying to improve? Really walk through the thought processes that are keeping you from improving the issue. List all the reasons you're telling yourself not to step forward. Then, for every argument you've proposed, act as your best friend and give yourself an argument for why it will work. For example, you may say, I can't start a new career because I'm too old or it's too expensive to go back to school. But your friend would say, you still have time to go after what you want, and you figured out how to make things work in the past. Doing this helps you counteract the narratives you've been telling yourself, so you can start to create new ones. When reflecting on this prompt, it's also good to think about the best case scenarios, since our narratives can often rely on the worst case ones to keep us from taking action. The next question is, how am I trying to protect myself by keeping myself stuck, and what do I need instead? We act in ways that benefit ourselves, so whenever you're wondering, why am I doing something that feels like it's actually harming me? The first thing to ask is, what does doing this actually do to protect me? What part of yourself is benefiting or trying to self-preserve itself by continuing to stay stuck? Maybe you've built up a coping method of avoiding conflict, and that has protected you in the past. Maybe you've tried and failed before, and your ego doesn't want you to feel embarrassed or rejected again. Identify what it is that you're protecting by not trying to improve the issue. Then ask yourself, what things could I be doing instead to help me cope with these emotions that I'm feeling? The second part of this question is about reflecting on ways to care for yourself that don't fall into the old patterns that are keeping you stuck. How can you give yourself the grace and support you need while still staying open to going after your goals? The last question is, what steps could I take to move towards the goal that I want and break free from the feeling of being stuck? Once you've figured out what it is that you want to focus on, you've shed the old narratives holding you back and given yourself permission to move forward with self-compassion, it's time to figure out what steps you can take to move in that direction. Think of this as a brainstorming exercise. Start by listing things that feel extreme to you, things that scare you or feel unrealistic. Then list things that feel like small steps forward, small enough that you can do them today. Lastly, list ideas that feel somewhere in the middle. For example, maybe the extreme is quitting your job to start a business, but a small step is researching how to set up an LLC or brainstorming business names. And a middle ground would be getting the business name registered and creating the social media accounts for proof of concept. Once you're done brainstorming, choose one of the small steps and commit to doing that within the next week. As you get more confident, continue to take bigger steps towards the goal. Remember to track your progress and celebrate the small steps that you're taking each day. It's ultimately these baby steps continued over a period of time that will allow you to begin to feel unstuck. I hope these prompts help you to identify what's causing you to feel unstuck and help you take the next step towards a more fulfilling life. Take the rest of the time to journal your thoughts. As always, remember to be gentle with yourself as you reflect and honor where you are right now without judgment. Thank you for spending this time with me. If today's reflection offered you any clarity or comfort, feel free to share it in the comments and like the video. Until next time, take care.